Alright, so I was at the reptile show last weekend selling some snakes, and someone came up to my display, up to my table where I had all my snakes, and they asked me a question that I've never been asked before, and they said, how often should I give my snake a bath? They kind of threw me for a loop. I was like, wait a minute, I've never really gave my snakes a bath on a regular basis, but there are some times where you'd actually want to give your snake a bath, and I'm going to show you how to do it and when you'd want to give your snake a bath. Alright, so this is pretty much the setup. If you want to give your snake a bath, I like to use just a regular old plastic tote, like a Rubbermaid tote. You can buy them at Walmart or Home Depot or anywhere. They're really inexpensive. And what I like to do is put just a little bit of water right in the bottom of the tote. I would say probably no more than the thickness of the snake that you're going to put in the water. And the temperature is pretty much between 80 and 90. I would definitely not get too hot. I wouldn't get too cold. So for example, if I wanted to give a snake a bath, here's one. That is my pastel calico female. This is where all my calico bamboo stuff came from, and they don't really, I'd say typically they really don't like to be in the water. And if you're giving them a bath, I would say usually you don't use any kind of detergent or anything like that. I would say just straight water for giving a snake a bath. And there's a couple reasons you'd want to give a snake a bath, and if you're using like a paper towel substrate or some kind of a paper substrate, a lot of times what'll happen is the snake will go to the bathroom in the tub, and then they'll kind of smear it around, and the whole snake, especially if you have a white snake, it'll get really dirty. and really what you want to do is just kind of work the mess off the snake in the water, and I would say just kind of rub the snake a little bit, and kind of, you can use, I would say you could use like paper towels or something to rub it off if it's really bad, but I would soak it just for a little bit. The other reason you'd give a snake a bath is if it's stuck in a shed, and that's typically why you'd want to soak your snake and put it in a little bathtub enclosure. It's just kind of soak it, is if it's stuck in a shed, to kind of help the shed come off. And let me show you one more snake that I really was considering giving a bath, and that is my albino. Let's check her out. So here's another snake. This is my albino pied male, and I decided not to pull out my albino female because she just ate a rat just about 2 hours ago. And I would say if you're giving a snake a bath or you're messing with the snake, you definitely don't want to mess with them at all right after they ate. I'd give them at least 2 days after they've eaten a rat to really mess with them at all, because you risk regurgitation. Especially even if you're just picking up a snake and handling it, I would definitely wait a couple days after you feed that snake. So especially if you're giving the snake a bath, I would definitely wait a few days. Now I'd say at least 2 days, you know, to be on the safe side. I'd probably do 3 days after a meal before you put a snake in there. But a white snake like this albino pied, there's a lot of white on it, and if you, especially if you're using a paper substrate, you'll see a lot of times they get really dirty. And I'm using a coconut husk substrate, and it really keeps the snakes really clean, which I like. The you know the mess from the snake really is absorbed into the substrate, and you really don't have to worry about it. I've actually never given the snake a bath, and you can see how nice and white it is, no problem at all. And generally, if I'm using paper, I'm going through giving my snakes baths more frequently. So here is an example of a snake that's ready to go into the shed. This is a spider pied male, and you can see he's getting a little bit of pink through his body, and that means he's getting ready to go in the shed. His eyes are clouding up a little bit, and it's always good to kind of soak your snakes if you can right before they go in the shed. But the problem with the spider is this one has a pretty severe head wobble, and you can see it's kind of a stargaze kind of effect, and there's a lot of snakes that really have this head wobble kind of a thing going on, and you really have to supervise these snakes, because I'm always afraid they're going to drown in the water, and because, you know, they really can't control their head. And the first time I actually put him in there, he was kind of struggling to stay out of the water. So if you're giving a snake a bath and it happens to have spider or champagne or anything like that, I would definitely work to keep the head out of the water. And sometimes the snake can struggle a little bit and kind of jump around, but you really got to be careful, especially if you have a head wobbler or stargazer, that they keep their head out of the water. You definitely don't want your snake to drown. And actually, what I prefer to do, instead of putting them in a tub like this, is to actually sprinkle them with a can in the enclosure. And let me show you how I do that. All right, so here's that same spider pied. So instead of putting it in the tub of water, what I actually do is I use this little water can. It's just really cute, kind of just like a garden watering can. I think it holds maybe 1 gallon. Actually, I think it holds half a gallon. And the thing I like about it is it's real easy to go through and hydrate the tub. And you could definitely tell the snake kind of jumped right there. And what I like to do is put my hand on the snake and then kind of water the snake a little bit. And that always seems to help if you have your hand on it. The other thing I like is I can get back up in the back and water. And usually I can go through all my tubs really quick, hydrate the tubs, and it works really well to actually clean off the snake. And instead of giving them a bath, I can just kind of go through real quick and you know, just do a real quick rinse of the snake. So it's kind of like, I'd say it's like a snake shower instead of a bath. So what I do is I just kind of go through and kind of just hose them down a little bit with this water can, and that's pretty much it. That is pretty much how I keep my snakes clean. It's real fast, real easy. I can go through my whole rack, just kind of water them down. And usually, you know, you got to watch out for feeding mode so you don't get bit, but I just put my hand on the snake and then go through, water the whole thing down. It hydrates the enclosure and hydrates all this coconut husk chip in here. Plus, it cleans the snake, and I really like it. It's really fast and easy. So when I was asked how often do you give your snake a bath, I actually said you don't really need to give your snake a bath at all, ever, because they shed their skin, and that's true to a degree. But if you see your snake, especially if you have a light colored snake and it's soiled in the enclosure, I would definitely go in and maybe put it in a bath. Or if you have like a substrate that's really absorbent, like a coconut husk, I would definitely go in there with a watering can, water them down. And keep in mind, if you're using a water can or if you're using a bath, I like to keep the water, I like to actually start with the water about 90 degrees because it slowly will cool down as you go through your racks or your enclosures. And typically, I think the best temperature is between 80 degrees and 90 degrees. You really don't want to get it too hot, and you don't really want to get it too cold. So let's talk about additives to the water when you're giving a snake a bath. And if I'm actually going through the tubs, opening up the tub and using my little water can and sprinkling anything on them, I definitely don't want to use any type of additives because it'll get in the tub, it'll get on the substrate. But if you're using, I would say like a tote, kind of a bathtub, or if you throw it in your sink or the bathtub. You know, I actually gave Lucy a bath, my 60-pound, 14-foot long reticulated python. I gave her a bath and actually made a video, and if you look back at my videos, it's just pretty hilarious. She's climbing up the walls. And if you haven't, something like that where it's just the water and you can drain it and it's not in the enclosure, there are some additives that you can actually add, and probably the best one, especially if your snake has like an abrasion or some kind of a cut or an infection, you can actually use povidone iodine. And I've used povidone iodine on, it's pretty much a universal disinfectant. You mix it up in the water pretty much like a weak tea strength. I've used it on some, I actually had a llama that had a big old cancerous growth on her chest, and the vet went in there and cut the whole thing off. She said she got it all. It was pretty amazing, and it was this big gaping hole in the middle of her chest, and every day I'd put a bandage on there and spray it down with povidone iodine diluted to like a weak tea kind of a concentration. I also had a cow where we removed the horns and a couple big holes in the head where the horns were, and I was using povidone iodine twice a day to flush those wounds. It's pretty much universal across all my animals, and I use it for the snake. snakes. There's also some Shed Ease products that you can mix with water. I've seen kind of little pre-made stuff. I don't know exactly, how well they work. I've never really used them. If I have a problem with the stuck shed, what I'll do is I'll put the snake in the water and kind of just rub gently with my hands, and usually all the shed will come off within, I'd say, 15 or 20 minutes. The other thing you really have to pay attention to is that you don't keep the snake in the water for too long, because the water can really chill off really quick, and you don't want a snake sitting there in cold water. And the other thing is you don't want the water too deep, because you risk, the snake drowning. You definitely, personally, if I'm giving my snake a bath, I like to watch my snake the whole entire time, just to be on the safe side in case anything goes wrong. That snake starts freaking out and goes under the water, I can grab that snake and pull him back up. Okay, so if you ask me how often you should give your snake a bath, I would say as often as it's dirty or if it's stuck in a shed. And also keep in mind, if your snake is injured, you could do the povidone iodine bath. And typically what I do for something like that is I would soak it for about 5 minutes for about 2 weeks straight. And I actually had an Arizona Mountain King snake that went into one of my moss balls and got stuck. I was using these little moss balls for humidity, if you look back at some of my videos. And basically what it was just a netting that you use for fruit, like for apples or oranges. You could see it at the grocery store sometimes. It's like a really wide netting. And I was stuffing it with sphagnum moss and tying it in a knot and making like a little pillow out of it. And it worked really well, especially if you're using tubs and a paper substrate to really increase the humidity in the tub. It was working really good. The only problem was my king snake burrowed through that moss ball and got stuck halfway through, and his body was starting to swell up around it. It got really damaged going into that moss ball. And let me tell you, I was soaking that snake every day for about 2 weeks until it finally pulled out of it. So that pretty much wraps up my discussion of how often you should give your snake a bath. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.